Today's a very important day for me. I've got right here in my pocket somewhere. Check it out. This is my graduation coin from Betty Ford. Today is the 20th of March, and that means that I've been clean and sober for a consecutive 2 years running now. And it feels really good. It comes with this sense of accomplishment, sense of pride, good pride, not that bad pride. It's a confidence in myself and my abilities to persevere and to achieve my goals, you know, inner strength and reliability. I want to thank everybody out there for being here with me too. I really appreciate y'all guys. Isn't it beautiful? This place for another night. Got a couple strong cans of liquor, guys. I'm really sorry. Really, really sorry. I'm just trying to concentrate on not getting in trouble out there, man. Figure if I can just lock myself up in here, and if I don't talk bad about people, all right? I'm not going to talk bad about anybody, all right? It's my fault. So I just want to get in here with you for a few minutes, all right, guys? Really sorry. I've totally let myself down, too. All right, I've really let myself down. I had it together, all right? So let's not get that drunken shit that we got going on, all right? I get some sleep here a little bit. We're gonna get up. We're gonna get out of here, all right? But yeah, it's pretty stone cold. I mean, I care about somebody. I go through those. I jump through the hoops, you know? I carry my haters out of the cold. I would die gladly to carry one of the bigger guys than me out of the cold. If somebody's hurting, I mean, like I said, it takes 5 minutes to go up to Walmart and get a goddamn drug test, right? 5 minutes. Piece of fucking cake.
Welcome to Monogamish, the show where we discuss with fullness and clarity the true nature of all modern relationships in today's monogamish matriarchy. I am Douglas Aleutian, author of the book, How the Matriarchy Came to Rule the World. And today we are discussing the future loneliness epidemic dystopian future that is here now. It is here now. And I am on my way to another memorial for another fallen man who fell because of a breakup. His name is Matt Brown. Matt Brown, you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, but I take a special interest in him. I actually was really keenly following his YouTube channel that I think he had a special skill at. I think he was very gifted. And I resonate a lot with a lot of things with Matt. And I think that a lot of us do. I think he is an everyman in a lot of ways. Matt was made famous from the show Alaska Bush People. This was a reality show that was in about the last 10 years. I think it started around 2010. I don't have that exact date right, but it was a family, the family of the Browns. I love these shows, and I've been involved with a lot of these shows. That was something I wanted to explain to you, my history with these shows. I've never actually been in one of these shows, but I've been around them a lot. And I'm talking about the Alaska reality shows. Starting with Deadliest Catch, I was a commercial fisherman. But I was a commercial fisherman before they had cameras, believe it or not. In the early 90s. That stuff didn't get started until the late 90s. And yeah, and I was an alcoholic commercial fisherman. One thing that's great about fishing is that when you're out there for a month at a time, you know, in the open ocean, living on your boat and fishing, yeah, you really don't drink. Most fishermen are a lot of them, I'll say. I don't want to piss off the ones that aren't, but you don't want to piss off fishermen. They're some of the toughest dudes that you'll ever meet. And a lot of them are alcoholics, so drug addicts. A lot of my friends that I knew from back then died of that. But I did that before it was a show, and I was kind of resented. Then they made it a show, and I'm like, oh, geez, you know, yeah. I mean, it was so right for that. You know, there were so many amazing things that we did up there on the boats that the world just didn't know about. And I grew up in Alaska. Part of my growing up was in Alaska. I grew up in Washington, but I also, my dad was in Alaska, and so I would get shoved up there, you know, in the Chugiak, Anchorage, Eagle River area, Kenai Peninsula, and I went to high school up there, at Chugiak High School, in the late 80s. So I've really been in and out of Alaska my whole life. I remember when I was up there, you know, back in those days, in the late 80s, when I was still kind of a teenager and drinking a lot. And you could drink back then, you know. I used to go in the bars, you know. I was like 16 years old, and I would go in the bars and drink in Alaska. It was the Wild West. And I looked at the maps, and I looked at the Aleutian Islands, and I looked at how they're just way out, and I was just fascinated by that. I was like, what's out there? You know, what is out there? You might notice my last name is Aleutian. Yeah, that's purposeful. But my heart was always out there, and I wanted to find out, and I did. Eventually, I went and beat the docks in Seattle and got a job on a fishing boat, and that started that. And I did that for several years. Then, you know, there was a big part of my life in where I was, you know, having relationships I was having a relationship then too. That was, mostly in Washington up until about 2018. And I returned to Alaska, and my one of my last videos, how I got wrecked the 10th time. The woman in that video that I talk about, Dee, her family was up in Alaska, and some of them were in the bush. And so I started taking trips back up there again about that time, 2018, 2019, and 2020, and on. And I was going out to the bush. The bush, if you don't know, is basically everywhere in Alaska. There's only a few cities. I live in northwestern Washington now, and there's a county there called Snohomish County. And Snohomish County has 800,000 people in it. That's more people than in the entire state of Alaska. There's only 700,000 in the whole state of Alaska. So the bush is really everywhere where it's not a city. And I started going out there to the bush and fulfilling a lot of my dreams, and with her family. And I'm going to get to Matt here, but this is something I noticed. So there's a lot of things that just tie similarities. But one of them is that Matt, in his last days, which is recently, he was in a relationship, and he did something that a lot of us do in relationships. He was estranged from his family because he was a drunk and had a lot of problems, and they had conflicts, and so he kind of that's what a lot of us do. We get, especially in the modern day, this is part of the loneliness epidemic. We get estranged from our families, and now you got all the on the female side of things, the psychology side of things. You got all this childhood trauma, that everybody's healing from, and everybody's on their healing journey, and they need to have no contact with their family, and Matt had done that. Now I'm way past that, but I've been there, and it's a part of the and maybe it's not just being estranged from your family. Maybe it's just the fact that we don't fucking have family. And so what we do is we get with somebody, and that's our attempt to make a family. To reestablish, and why do we keep getting in these relationships? Why do we go, we get just totally wrecked, and most of us try again more than once, and we get wrecked repeatedly over and over. And Matt had done that, I had done that, where you form this new family with your partner. And in my case, was up in Alaska, and in Matt's case, it was over in a place called Oroville and Loomis, Washington, which is where I'm heading right now for Matt's memorial. And he hooked up with this gal named Jamie. It's all public. It's all on videos if you want to watch it. Watch Matt's videos. His channel is called The Road Wanderer. It's kind of like The Road Warrior, but The Road Wanderer. I like that. He's very creative, and it's very accurate description of Matt. He saw himself as living in an apocalyptic dystopian future that I see that we are living in too. Now, a lot of people are starting to see it. and he hooked up with this gal, Jamie, and she had 2 kids that weren't his. He didn't even have kids. It's another similarity. But she had kids. He made her kids his kids. He was a father to those 2 girls. And then the rest of her family and his extended family, all these, and the biggest family that he had was you. Yeah, if you watch Matt's channel, it was all about the people that were subscribing to his channel that even up to the last days, you know, he was really, that was all he had. When everybody in his real world went sideways, but they didn't, but some of them did. The important ones did. People tried to help Matt, and that's, I'm hoping that when I get out there today and tomorrow, that I can find some of these people and maybe interview some of them. That's what I'm doing here. I have a feeling this video that I'm recording right now is probably going to be a multi-part series that I'm going to put together. Hopefully, we'll see what I find out there. But I'm going out there for you and for me. We're coming up on Stevens Pass right now. So I had this woman, and she had this family in Alaska and back down here in Washington, and that's how it works if you're from the Northwest. And the family that was out on the bush, they got signed too. They got signed onto Life Below Zero. And I also have a lot of friends from my fishing world and from my recovery world that are on the Deadliest Catch. So this is what I'm talking about, you know, personal to me ties here. And I've been involved with this stuff a little bit, not a lot. I have a whole nother life too that I've lived. But like Matt, when his relationship went sideways, his families went sideways. And that's what happened to me. I very well could be part of the Life Below Zero situation. They're canceled now, but or off. They're done. It was an amazing show though, and I was to some extent around when they were filming in the bush, and but that relationship going sideways resulted in that family going sideways, because when you lose your relationship, you lose the family connection too. And I've done it, I've done it 10 times. I've never seen it. I really never seen it. Not every situation, the breakup is the same where you never talk to them again for the rest of your life, like I have with a lot of them. That's not always the case. Sometimes the case is that, you have this weird, it's complicated situationship going on for a long time. I got problems here. I'm behind this U-Haul and it's road construction I can't pass. But there's a lot of different versions of how that breakup, relationship destruction goes. But one thing that is constant is that family destruction, that usually doesn't last. And I've had really good relationships and really good friends But when the family thing goes sideways, there's always this kind of weird little thing, like their motivation for wanting to, have you part of their life was really connected to the fact that their relative was their mom or their uncle or whoever, whatever relationship it was, and you might stay friends on Facebook, right, or something like that, right? I've done that. Okay, now I can pass this guy. He's actually hauling ass pretty good, like doing 80, but I just don't want to be behind him. Back to our discussion. Those family relationships tend to not last very long after the dissolution. And I think that is one of the reasons why it hits us so hard, because we have this dissolution of the family relationship that it's not just a breakup, and people in the world treat it like that, that, everybody, this nowadays our society is the blue pill society, especially, I really think it's a sickness. It's really perverse and demonic how people are so, it's just like normalized that you build a life with somebody and then it didn't work out, just the callousness and a lot of that is, I think, the side of that relationship that's generally destroying the relationship. I'm not going to say who, which side that is, but that side is basically always, they're narcissist, right? And they're always justifying and minimizing the deadly destruction that they're doing. And so they're destroying your family. They don't fucking care, man. They don't. And you know that if you've been through it, you've seen it, right? And Matt was going through that. Not only that, but there's some, I don't know how, I haven't verified this, but I know that he said it in his videos that she was with somebody else. She had moved on. Because I followed the timeline, and I wanted to discuss that a little bit. I followed the timeline quite a bit here for about the last 4 years with Matt. And from what I can see, out of the last 4 years of Matt's life, let's say from 39 to 43, right? That's about where he is. He died May 30th, 2026, of a self-deletion. They found him in the Okanagan River. And I know the guy who found him, and I'm hoping to talk to him too. He's a tracker. His company is called Stardog Tracking. Stardog, by the way, it's a song by Mother Love Bone, which, if you watch my videos, you see Mother Love Bone is very featured. Mother Love Bone is the heart of grunge, the beginning of grunge. I'm a Star Dog champion. That's the song, Star Dog Champion. Anyways, so I've tracked his story back to probably about 2022, 2021, which is, a critical time for me too. That's when I last got wrecked, when I had my motorcycle accident, lost my relationship. And at least going back that far, Matt was mostly sober, and Matt was building a YouTube channel. And Matt, having grown up being on reality TV, in his late 20s, I'd say, he had self-explained. He had learned how to edit and video record. And one thing that I noticed about Matt's videos is he was doing a lot of he's really a forerunner in this area of discussion about what I call white pill topics. He played the hero role. That's a critical component, I think. And he was always trying to help people. And he was really into what he called, or what a lot of people call, I don't know if he called it this, but bushcraft, which is basically how he grew up. If you've watched that show, and I grew up that way too. He grew up half living in the woods, like I never slept inside, most summers when I was a kid. I had a fort. I was camping. I was outside, and a lot of us were back in the 70s and 80s. But Matt was, he was a little later, but he was up in Alaska, and his family was really, into kind of roughing it. And I got to say one thing about the Alaska bush people, that story that I always noticed was there's a very fine line between what you want to say, living off grid, right? Today they call it homesteading. There's always some trendy name, but there's a very fine line between that and being homeless. There. And that line can kind of waver a little bit. Not everybody who lives off grid is homeless by any stretch, right? And not everybody who's homeless is living off grid. But you notice that, so I think Matt, he took a lot of these skills, and he was recording, and he was doing some great stuff. He would go on these adventures, and he would record it, and just amazing cinematography. I think, if that's the right word for it, the filmmaking, the directing, the producing, the editing, the quality of the cinematography that he was doing was fucking excellent. I mean, it's really beautiful stuff. And he would do things with his camera. And I don't think Matt didn't have like a lot of expensive gear, right? Like, he was totally just duct tape and baling wire, whatever kind of little pieces of rope he could find. I mean, he was really a really resourceful, thrifty guy. And he made some fantastic, and I just thought, God, it's a shame what happened to him. I really think, he could have really advanced this a lot had he not had this other problem that's going on which is this alcoholism and the monogamish relationship destruction. See, those two things together, they can really suck the resources out of somebody. And I'm on my way to Oroville, Washington, right up on the border in central area, Washington, beautiful. That's where they lived. And they, being the Alaska Bush people, they all kind of moved there after the show kind of went sideways, and they did like the last few seasons they were in Washington. The patriarch of the family was a really cool guy, Billy Brown, and he died, and that was a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2022 also. I'm not certain on that date, but Matt was very close to him. They all were. So that was a big deal when he died. That was a really big deal. And Matt started his channel, and he was going up, taking these adventures up in the mountains. There's this Chapaka Mountain, which I'm thinking I might go hike up there. And he was just camping and exploring the wilderness and recording it. And he did it also with his woman. She was in some of those videos too, out there with them exploring around. So you can see there's a lot of similarities. Now let's get to the timeline. So Matt was sober. He was going to AA. He'd been, even going back to say 2010, right? I don't know what the exact year was, but he was in. He went to Betty Ford in the show, right? And he was going to. As a young man, he was in recovery back then, and the problem with Matt. He was kind of what we call in the program a chronic relapse, and this is unfortunately a common situation. And they think, I got this, right, and they go away. This is the main. We call it isolation, but this is the loneliness epidemic. This, like I say, the reason that I can explain these things, I have to remind you, I am 30 years sober. I have never gone away. And I've watched this, ever since I first got sober. I watched people that, it's like they had this callousness about, like they didn't seem to take it serious. By the time I got sober, I rejected all that stuff, for a long time. But by the time that I hit bottom, I hit a really bad bottom when I was 24. And I'm not going to get into all that here, but one thing that I went into my recovery with since the very beginning was this idea that if I don't get this, I'm going to die. And Matt even said it, that, something in the program that we talk about. He said this in his final days in one of his videos, and that's what's so interesting about this is you can watch his videos all the way up to the end of May when he did it. And you can watch what was going on with him. And so that's what I'm talking about, is I'm talking about what was going on with him. Because what was going on with him is a thing that is very, very common with people. And I'm going to describe that. It's a falling away in this turning into yourself. And So when I was new, what I was saying is I had this idea that if I don't get this, I am going to die. I have to get this. But not everybody has that. A lot of people have what they call a high bottom, or they have reservations. And Matt was young when he went in. It's common, they had to do it for the show and all this stuff, and family, and maybe he didn't really want to be there. I don't know. I don't know the details of that. But I know a lot of people like that. They're not ready. This is what we call it. We say they're not ready. And they just don't take it that seriously. They might agree with some aspects, right? But the whole thing about recovery in the 12 step is that we have to basically admit defeat and then kind of grab on and turn over our lives and have this dependence instead of on this self-reliance, which is loneliness epidemic, self-reliance, right? On a higher power. We have to tune in to a higher power and other people. This is the program. This is what the 12-step recovery deal is. It's a reliance on other people and that we can't do it alone. But people have a hard time with that, and they kind of, and they go into their own little world again. Little by little. Sometimes it's a very, slow thing. A lot of what happens is people get wrecked, and then they get sober, and they're rebuilding their lives, right? And what is happening for that individual is that they were all messed up, and everything, their relationships, their career, their place where they live, you have to rebuild all these things, right? And that's part of why it's so hard for people to do it, because they're like they're so close to it. They're like, well, if I can take another hit, right, I know that life, I can go back to that life. Or I can face this really hard thing. I have to rebuild everything about my life, from the ground up, not only start over, but do things that I've never learned how to do, right? And so sometimes that's just too much for people, and they just bail, Man, it's one of those, it's so stupid, we're all following this slow motherfucker that's doing like 50 in a big RV, right? And then there's a passing lane. And what does everybody do? They all speed up. They go from 50 to 80. And so everybody's trying to pass. They're all jockeying, and the passing lane's, so short that, nobody really ever gets around them. And then we all just change positions behind the same asshole who's going 50, right? And then everything slows back down to 50. Oh, this is, I'm sure you've seen that. So, recovery. Matt, you start rebuilding your life. And what happens is your focus gets onto that, right? And especially when you get in a relationship. That's why get in a relationship. The people in the program talk about this all the time. I mean, it's the thing. Because we lose our relationships. And the people in recovery, they all want to blame the loss of the relationship. This is why I've came to this understanding of the monogamish worldwide situation that we're all dealing with. Because we think that it's us, right? Oh, well, I lost my relationship because of this, because I was a drunk, or I was, I was doing bad things, and she finally, got rid of me. Actually, it's just the opposite. The modern pattern with relationships is that people that are out of control, dysfunctional, like especially men, like unavailable, like this is what the women are attracted to, right? They're like hard programmed to go for these guys. And that's an amazing phenomenon. I'm not going to get deep into that in this because we're talking about Matt. But yeah, Matt got one, and she wasn't bad. Jamie wasn't bad. I mean, I was like, yeah, she's a decent looking gal, kind of a real calmly kind of a appearance, a gentle spirit seemingly. I don't know her. But seemed nice in the show. That's just the show. He mentioned that. He's like, she did too. They had sit downs where they were trying to deal with the haters that were talking about their relationship, and he even mentioned in there, and she did, that, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's not, it's not in the show, that you guys don't see. I'm sure. So, you get your life and you building it back up. And what happens is you drift away from the focus on your recovery. And that's why there's like a saying that I learned when I was new in recovery, that you have to make sobriety the most important thing in your life. And this is a hard thing to get, because you go, well, that's a lot. And so people will balk at that, and they because they go, well, I don't want to just like go to meetings and to be one of those guys, right? And just that's all I ever do. Now I was living life, and I was a fisherman on the high seas, and I was doing all these great things, and now I just go to meetings and and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes. Like that's lame, right? And so people, that's a real knee-jerk thought, but you're missing it. You're missing the whole point, right? And what it really, I'll tell you the little secret here. I know the secrets. I'm successful. I have succeeded where all these other people have failed in these things. And I have the proof. 30 years. The little secret is this. Not only sobriety, but God itself. It has to be, but even sobriety, people will say, well, like I can't have sobriety be in front of God, right? Because if you're following, any real religion in the world, it's thou shalt have no other gods before me. Yeah, it's the first commandment, right? So, I gotta, I gotta have, that's gotta be first. It can't be sobriety. Well, actually, no. It's gotta be sobriety. Because what happens if you're not sober is that demon has taken over. That demon has got the better of you. And now it's not God anymore. It's the devil. And I mean, you might say, especially if you're not, familiar with these worlds, you might say, well, that's crazy, that's extreme, right? Well, if you are familiar with these worlds, you've seen it. Look at what happened to Matt. That's why my contention is the demon got the better of him. So you can't let that happen. And that's what happens if you start drinking. In Matt's timeline, he did I traced it to August 11th, 2025. Last August, he relapsed. Yeah. And there's a couple dates there that I found. He didn't come clean right away. He was still making shows. He did eventually come clean. He started making shows while he was under the influence.
Was she really cool in the beginning? Great in bed, excellent conversationalist. Now all of a sudden she can't understand what you're talking about. And you gotta do it until 3, 4, 5 in the morning. When you got something important you gotta do in the morning. We could have probably done this later, but it's gotta be immediate. Reactional abuse. The point is to fuck you up enough in the head that you look like the bad guy. You snap out at a party. You snap out at work. Whatever it is, everybody else sees your reaction when you're like, fucking cut it out. Nobody sees the days that it took to get you there. All right? Masculinity is frowned upon in this world. Women cry. Men get angry. Period. End of story. Fucking check it out. Criers seem to be forgiven. Anger is not forgiven. I left because first day of school, forgive me. This is not illegal. It's not illegal. First day of school. We've been doing about 3 days in a row. Mr. Rumpelstiltskin. Girls came home, and she wouldn't stop it. Went in the middle of the kitchen, whispered. Like, I tried to keep it. I tried to keep it away from them because I was that way. My mom and dad did that shit, and I know how bad it was. So I tried to keep it quiet. But she'd go running through the fucking house, crying over nothing. So there we were. First day of school at sometime in August 19th, something like that. Girls walk in. I'm standing in the kitchen. I can't believe that we can't just get it together for a moment. Because I can't even figure out what we were arguing about. I wasn't arguing. I was just listening and trying to make everything okay. I can't figure out what the she's really talking about. I'm just trying to respond because I don't want this to melt down. It's the best thing I ever had. And I'm like, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I'm trying as hard as I can.
Yep. And you can watch this whole slide. It's fascinating. To me, at least. To me, it's and this is what I've done. This is what I do. And so I have, I call them a string chart. A string chart is basically what crime detectives put together. You see it in the movies. There's all these pictures, and then there's pins and strings that link up the pictures, right? And it's a you're some type of a almost psychotic level of obsession to try to solve this crime, to put all these pieces together. And this is what I do. I'm a forensic psychologist and a I call myself a scientist. I've been doing this my whole life. This is how I came to develop the system that I've written my book after, which is the entire explanation of the history and exactly what the pattern is of the modern relationship that I call monogamish, driven by the power imbalance between men and women that has shifted the power balance from men to women. And so I analyze this stuff, and I follow not just my own cases, but I follow everybody's cases. And I've been doing this my whole life, and I collect the data points, and I've done this with Matt. And that's why I'm bringing this to you. That's why my focus is on this at the current moment. So Matt, the dates that I've put together, the next date is 3/11/26. So he relapsed August 11th. Yeah, and maybe it's not, I have it written down, but I'm not going to look at it right now. I literally have my own string chart. It was 3/19. I want to say 3/19. Yeah, 3/19. Yeah, it was 3/19, not 3/11. 8/11, 3/19. And he said that, this, I put this together by listening to him, and some of it is him drunk, rambling. People don't have the patience for this. I shared some of these, like Will, my friend, has really been, he's the one that even told me, Matt Brown died, and I whoa, really? And that's when I started digging into it. But Will, he says, I just don't have the patience to listen to, an hour or 2 hours of this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, but I'm working all the time, and I'll have this playing in the background when I can, and I'm just tracking and making notes, literally. And so I've pinpointed the timeline of this, and there's more to come, that I'm working. That's why I'm going out there. And he said that that's when he got in a fight with her. And it was because she was seeing somebody else. And before that, in this interim between 8/11 and 3/29, what also had happened is that Matt was saying that they were friends, right? So he was living with her. They had gotten an apartment together. He was paying for it, and he was living with her and her kids for quite a while, I think. And then it went sideways. And he walked out. From what I don't know if she tossed him out or he walked out, but he's very, clear that right at this point, this 3/19/2026, he starts recording videos where he's drunk from 2 locations. Three actually. One is a hotel room.
Maybe you're going through the same thing. You going through the same thing. Can't understand why it's happening. You stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning, talking about nothing. Can't even describe to your friends what you talked about. What it was that was so important. Or why it had to be the day before something important was happening.
Because he had money, right? This is before he blew all his money from a hotel room. The other place was a park.
I am the last inglorious drunken bastard behind enemy lines. I am the one thing you did not count on, Kathy. I am indivisible.
And the other place was the Burger King.
I didn't know if I was going to tell y'all guys about this or not. I tried to do my own tattoo. I did. And I'm going to finish it. I knew this guy in one of my rehabs who taught me how to make a tattoo gun and tattoo ink. And so I did it myself. It's supposed to say Revenant. but the ink and stuff wasn't taking. It worked really well at first, but then it stopped taking, and so I stopped doing the tattoo because I don't want it to be all messed up. I mean, it's supposed to look handwritten. It's supposed to look like a guy who did it himself after coming back from the dead, basically. Revenant means someone who has come back from the dead to set right that which is wrong. To me, it sounds like an amends, a spiritual death. They're coming back from it, and then the making things right part, right? And so, yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, it looks like trash, and it's still healing. But, yeah, so it's supposed to say Revenant.
The Burger King was the last place. That was his last home, was the Burger King. And so he was filming this whole, and he was spiraling down the drain. And people saw it. People knew it. People warned him. People warned other people. People called the cops. And you've seen this. You might have been that guy. You know what I'm talking about. And he went from the hotel to, and he said this. There was a whole video he did this. He's like, well, if I had to choose between a house and food, I would rather choose food. What that meant was that he no longer had enough money for both. The hotel was eating him up. So now he's camping, and we're talking March, we're talking March in Eastern Washington, which is, it's pretty, where the weather's tough, but Matt's tough. He's grew up in the bush of Alaska, so Matt knows about rain. Matt knows about snow. Matt knows about living outside in the rain and snow. Yeah, I'm driving through Leavenworth right now, and you just saw me go down Tumwater Canyon, which is a beautiful part of Highway 2, the state-sponsored Highway of Death, into Leavenworth, which is just an amazing place. You guys all got to come here and check it out. It's only going to get cooler from here. And Leavenworth is a little German town where, if you are in a relationship, this is where you're going to go. The women love it here. There's all these little shops, that's what you do. You walk around. But that's not all you do. Leavenworth has got some of the most amazing hiking, and like a lot of these, cool mountain town places, just like Jackson, Wyoming. The Enchantments are a little range inside the Cascades over here. They're called the Enchantments. It's a little high peak, high alpine area that is just gorgeous. Mount Stewart and Kolchak Lake, and these little places that, and then there's Stevens Pass skiing. There's Mission Ridge to the east. There's even a little ski resort in Leavenworth, and mountain biking galore, hiking galore, river rafting, fishing, fly fishing. This is the apple capital of the world. The valley, this is called the Wenatchee Valley. It's the Wenatchee River here. And the Wenatchee River flows down into Wenatchee, where we're heading next. And it's going to hit the Columbia there in Wenatchee. And we're going to go up the Columbia to all the way up to the border. All the way up to the border to where the town called Oroville is. And I just running late, I just had a hard time. Like, this is I'm doing what Matt talked about doing, but he never did. This is the problem with drunks. You all probably have seen this. The drunk that sits on the bar talking about what he's going to do, but never actually does it, you know. And when people get sober, this is one of the things that they do. And, you know, what I was telling you is the way that we go our separate way is you start, well, you know, I'm making up for all this lost time. And I'm living life, you know, and I have a relationship, I have a family, I have a job, now I'm busy. I don't know how I ever had time to drink. You know, people will tell you this. They say that all the time. I don't know how I had time to drink. But that they had time to drink because they destroyed all that stuff, right? That's what happens with the drinking. And that's what Matt was, you know, he was in that progression that the alcoholics get. And I've seen this. I can tell you, Matt is not unique. I have so many friends that they went down that same progression and they're dead. They're dead. Then when they say jails, institutions, death, that ain't no joke. That really ain't no joke. A lot dead, a lot. I have some friends that are still alive and got sober again. Shout out to my friend A. That guy, God, I thought he would have been dead a long time ago. But somehow he's still going. He's been on the streets. I've known guys like this on the streets of Seattle. It is a rough place, really rough. You think about Seattle as being this, you know, liberal joke, right? But I'll tell you, the jungle. There are places, huge, you know, camps all around that people live. I've known these guys to get clean, right? So Matt was really living the life. He was never in Seattle, as far as I know. He was over here 120 miles east in the Cascades, in the Central Cascades, in the Okanagan. Which, if you ever watch any of these dumb shows, this AI slop of, you know, where it's retelling about Matt, they can't say, you know, none of the people that aren't from here, they can't say the word Wenatchee. They can't say Wenatchee. Right? There's so many. Entiat is another one. Columbia, they usually get that one right, but Okanagan, yeah, they totally messed that one up. Yeah, Okanagan, Okanogan, you know, they say all these, and there's just a whole lot of you know, the words, the names around here. They're from the Indians. They're Indian names, a lot of them, and yeah, people don't know how they're pronounced unless you're local. And been local for a long time, you probably don't know. I'm kind of stuck in Leavenworth, this traffic. This is how it is. This is another issue with, so yeah, like I was telling you, I'm trying, the memorial that they're having over there in Oroville today is from 2 to 6. Hopefully I make it before 6. It's 3 now. But what I'm doing that Matt was trying to do too was he was trying to get together a rig that he could travel in, and he wanted to travel and basically, you know, live full time remote. I call it remotely, right? But he was really, the truth is, he was homeless. But that wasn't really ever a condition to him. He wasn't homeless really, like, I don't think Matt was ever homeless like we think of, in the city, right? Because he was in the wilderness, so his version of homeless, he had a fire a lot of nights, and he was eating fine, and he had, resources to a certain extent. He had a truck, he had a car. They didn't run really, but yeah, so he was trying to he wanted to get his truck fixed up, and it was really a piece of junk, right? And but it was kind of iconic. He had this old GMC, I think it is, Scottsdale truck, like a 70s probably, late 60s, 70s. I mean, it was with the automatic. It was 4-wheel drive though, but the clutch was basically gone, right? So he had to shift clutchless and putting it in 4 and everything, clutchless. And so there was a lot of problems with that. It didn't really have good tire. It's not like he had. This is what happens when you're a drunk. You don't have resources to put into all this other stuff, because you go into this crisis management mode, and it just kind of spirals from there. And that's what was going on with him, post the breakup. And, he said that they were friends, which that's highly suspicious, and I, from what I could tell, Matt was doing what I explain a lot, what a lot of us do. He was simping out. And I don't really think Matt had a lot of red pill knowledge, really. But Matt was a very masculine man, for sure. And he was kind of following the path that we all do of, your relationship goes sideways. Why does the relationship go sideways? I explain this. It's because you have no power. And that's an abnormal situation, not having power. It's not supposed to be like that. And it gets wrecked, and what does the man do? He starts to try to, well, how can I fix this? What's wrong, and that's what he was doing. He was doing that with her. I can see that. I watched, I know what to look for. I can pick up on these things real easy.
So I can't even figure out what we were arguing about. I wasn't arguing. I was just fucking listening, trying to make everything okay. I can't figure out what the fuck she's really talking about. I'm just trying to respond because I don't want this to melt down. It's the best thing I ever had. And I'm like, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I'm trying as hard as I can.
And he was doing what we do, and he was trying to, you'll go from this state of rage of, that, she's with another guy, right? And she's basically just completely disrespected you and completely abandoned you. And to like this other kind of nice guy where, he's making excuses for. Oh, well, we're friends. We'll always be friends. He was doing videos with her, in his motel room. She was at his motel room, and then he mentions this. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but this is after 3/19. This is after, when he's in the motel, and then he's not with her, but he's still talking to her, and he says that he thought that they were getting, and this is, then he's, it hits him again, and he's drunk, and he's telling this story about how he thought they were going to get back together. He thought that it was good, he had all, like, and this is what the guys have, all this hope, and they're hoping that they can fix it, and she's kind of showing up a little bit, right? But I'm telling you guys, I have this nailed down. Once they go down this path where they're exiting, I call it the exit phase. It's phase 3 of the monogamish cycle. It's the exit phase. And she's gone. She might not know it yet. You might not know it yet, but she is gone. Because whatever kind of yes daddy mode that you ever had of compliance and submission, of this feminine state that is attracted to this masculine state, that's what a relationship is. That they all have to have, they have to have this stuff, right? That's what makes it. And so you got this natural good balance going of this masculine dominance and feminine submission. And when that gets wrecked, you can't get it back. She's gone through this process, and she's on the outs, and she loses respect. And what happens is then the guy starts making concessions, right? And that just makes it worse. There's nothing that can fix it, right? You can do all the right things, and you can not make concessions. You can just tell her to piss off too, and that might work for a little bit. She might go, oh, I'm sorry, but it's sooner or later it's coming back. It'll come back around over and over until it gets to the total exit. So you can simp out, you can not simp out, whatever. Either way, there's a point where she's gone. And this is why we don't have long-term relationships anymore. And Matt doesn't know this, right? He thinks that he's finally, and he's blaming himself. This is the other thing that I saw him do. This is what all guys do, and you'll see this in his videos. He's going, guys, I got to set the matter straight. It's not Jamie, it's me. He says that. He's totally upfront about it. He's like, I'm the bad guy.
It's my fault.
That's what he says. I'm the bad guy. I just want to be clear on that. He fully blames himself. He never steps out of the hero role that he's in. And I think that this is what happened. I know I've experienced this for the last 30 years plus, it being in recovery, is people, they when they start drinking, they're cut off from this bigger picture knowledge, right? And they get trapped in these little cycles of spiraling mental deterioration. You've seen this.
I could have come there and got my truck. I could put you in the passenger seat. We could have listened to something nice on the radio.
Through the 5 stolen bases for Miami today.
But we talked about this. If it ever happened again, it was over. All right. I know you think I'm some punk. One of those other dudes that you dated. And every move you made, they got jaded. But me, I'm faded. Sorry, can you not relate? Maybe I'm dated. Too old to die young. Lost last disheveled gun.
Here I am, what? Not fun? You were the one. I turn, I'm spun. I'm not bored.
Have you tried the new Chick-fil-A?
And I never miss. Sorry, babe. You don't win this one.
The buttermilk ranch fun.
What will we drink to?
Every one of you has seen an alcoholic or an addict, but alcoholics are just notorious for it. And you've seen them when they go in circles. If you talk to them, and they're like you think that maybe they make sense a little bit, right? And then you notice that they're going in these circles, and they keep looping back around this same old trip. And you're like, and that's when you realize it. That's when you're like, oh, that person, whether it's a male or female, they're just drunk, right? You realize, well, they're drunk. That's what's happening, right? But it's not just that they're drunk. That's why I call it a spirit. Alcohol, that's what they called it in the old days. Alcohol's no different than drugs, too. It's the same. I mean, yeah, they have some differences, but from this perspective, it's a spirit.
Guys, please, very important. Let the rest of our friends, our community, spread this, all right? Tell everybody I'm on this channel now. Tell them that I lost my other one. Tell them that I wasn't paranoid, I wasn't wrong. Everybody that said that I was wrong. Half of the ones that said that I was, never mind. Yeah, but tell them I'm here, all right? Tell them I'm doing good. Tell them I'm pushing on. Tell them I got old Blue here. All right? Between you and me, last night I slept in a cemetery. I shit you not. I really did.
They're spirits. That's why I call it the demon. And that's what the demon does, is that it gets you in this little spiraling situation. And that's what was happening to him. And he was spiraling around in this, it's not her fault, it's my fault. But then back to rage, of, what am I supposed to do, and she's with another guy, and people would watch it. I would read the comments on it, and they would be frustrated. They'd be like, this is just you're watching the making of a madman, essentially. This is a guy who's, and you were. Unfortunately, they were right. And there's one more thing I want to talk about in this little preview here as we are rolling through Kashmir, Washington, Peshastin, Washington, Dryden, Washington. These are little apple towns. This whole valley is full of apples from one side to the other, up every little couloir, every little side valley, up into the national forest. And once you get to the Columbia, that's all apples too. And then we're going to hit Wenatchee here very shortly, probably about 10 miles away from Wenatchee, where I'm probably going to fuel up and then head up the Columbia, which is beautiful. So while Matt was spiraling at the Burger King and recording his videos and going outside and smoking,
I've got 1 month to live, baby. After that, I'm a bum for real.
if you've seen him, you know what I'm talking about. There were people that knew what was going on. And there was one guy in particular. His name was Tom. And I want to find this guy, Tom. I want to talk to him. And because I know these people, I'm a part of these communities. I know what it's like in this, even in these little towns where you have a recovery community, right? And there's people in that community. There's people like me. That's why I want to talk to Tom. I think Tom is a guy like me. Never met him. I can tell. I watched a whole video that Matt recorded, about an hour and a half long, where Tom took him in, bought him a burger or two at that, I think it was at the Burger King. And Tom talked to him. And Tom told him, look, dude, you don't have to do this. And he was so cool about it. He did, because this is what happens when this situation happens. And you all know it. You know that this happens. You know that you've seen it. You know that you've tried to help. And I'll tell you right now, call 811. If there's, YouTube wants this to be in the video, and I'm totally cool with it. That there is resources available. You can talk to somebody even when nobody else wants to talk to you. There's a number. You dial 988. 988. That's the number. 24/7. You can call that number if you feel like you need somebody to talk to. You can call that number. So what I was talking about is we all know people like this. Or we might be a person like this. And the question always comes up, is there something that I could have said that would have changed it? God, I didn't see that coming. I wish, and we replay the tapes. If it's our family members, we blame ourselves. We have all this guilt. God, I wish I would have said this. I wish I would have said that. I wish I wouldn't have said this. But with Matt, there's a guy named Tom. And I got to say, hats off to Tom. Tom did everything right. Tom was like an angel of God. Literally. That came to Matt and told him every possible right thing that anyone could have said to a guy in that situation.
I'm sticking my hand out for you.
Appreciate that, man. You know how I am.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
I do. So I'm stubborn like most of us.
Nice. I was gonna say stubborn.
So
Yeah, stubborn is a good word.
I said, if you want to come with me and get a shower and all that, you're more than welcome. Oh, my God, you're more than welcome.
I appreciate it, man.
And you don't feel like you're ever a burden to me, ever.
No, I've been drinking.
No?
Yeah.
Not a burden. I don't watch much because it hurts me too much to watch it falling.
I understand it, man. I understand that.
And what's really gotten to me is what I keep hearing is, you don't mind if I be blunt, right?
Be blunt. Everybody else says.
No, I'm not putting you down. I'll never put you down.
Yeah, man.
But what I'm being blunt about is what's God telling me that the path that you're going is going to be a short path.
Probably.
I love you too much to watch you fall like this. And so, and as you were saying earlier, yes, I have one that I think about every day.
Yeah, man.
I mean, there's not a day. We haven't been together in, what am I, 53? We haven't been together. I got a strong sensation that you feel that I've said something wrong with you in some way. I just want to let you know, whatever I haven't wronged you. I'm always here for you.
Yeah, man.
Always.
I know that.
You call me, I'll drop and go.
Yeah. No, man. You and me, we're square.
I hope you still have my numbers. So
I do. I'm not a nice guy, Tom.
you are. You have moments that when you fall, we all fall. We're human. Like I said, it's not how you fall, it's how you get up. When you pick up the phone, you look at it, you look at our messages, we all do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's human nature. We want to know, hey, did they reach out? How are you?
Yeah.
You know, do they care? Well, I mean, the signs are whether you care or not in the whole relationship.
Yeah. You see, that's why I keep saying to myself, too. It's like somebody who cares would be there when a person is at their weakest. You know what I mean?
I mean, I was manipulated in my last. And it's taken me 14 years to get over it. I'm here because God sent me here.
Amen.
I'm not here for me. I'm not here for any kind of glory. I'm here for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tom.
He said, I can help you. You can come stay with us. Him and his wife, I presume. At our house. Just relax. Get yourself centered again. You're not on a good path. And you know it. Matt couldn't hear it. People in the comments were telling him too, Matt, you need a meeting. You need a sponsor. And Matt got mad, like a lot of alcoholics do.
Look, as long as I wake up tomorrow, I ain't in handcuffs, I ain't killed anybody. It's a good day. That's the very bottom of existence, isn't it? Isn't that the very bottom that a person can ask for? I ain't in jail, I ain't killed anybody. Yeah, but you see, that's what they say here in AA. Welcome to AA. This is the worst we get. Normally we're pacing back and forth, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. Jail's institution or death. That's what they say in the big book. Matt, you need a meeting and a sponsor. Yeah, fuck that, man. I need the fuck out of here is what I need. All right. Screw that. I need somebody who actually cares.
That's not what I need. And he was obsessed and focused on his little plan. He's gonna any day now. He was like, any day now, he's gonna be leaving this town. He's gonna go on the road 24/7, and he kept talking about he's gonna get his check is gonna come. He was counting the days when his check was gonna come. Except there's one video. This is really key, I think, to the whole thing. There's one video where he talks about his check coming. See, before that, he was talking about his check coming, and it was not, it was like he's going to get his check, and then he's going to go on, and he's going to be on the road, and he's going to make videos. Well, this one, his check was coming, but he said something really key. He said, this is going to be the last check I ever get.
It's the last paycheck we'll ever get, guys.
So I'm going to make it count. Wow.
So, and it was on the 20th when he thought it was coming. Remember, the 30th is the day. He goes, this is the last. So I don't know, maybe it was the 17th or 18th or something when he was saying this. This is the last check I'm ever going to get. So I better spend it good. See, what that tells me is he knew. He had it made up in his mind at that point. And it was all he could see.
Because I don't really want anybody else. We were so happy. Look what we came to. I tried calling her. She just blocks me. She won't let me say anything back. I don't know. Maybe she thinks I put... Right? Maybe that's what she's hoping for. I know a lot of guys check out that way. I won't. I don't think she really understands my capacity to suffer. I don't think the entire world understands my capacity to suffer. Because I won't. I do not know how to self-terminate. I won't do it.
That's the problem with this stuff. You can't, you don't have a good perspective. You're seeing a very narrow, and I look at it, I'm like, if only he could see what I could see. What I saw was a brilliant man. I saw a brilliant guy who was amazing at his craft, who could have been one of the next really great videographers, YouTube channels that we could all just love and enjoy. There's guys that I follow that do this stuff, that are traveling for various purposes, camping in various ways, and making videos that are fantastic. Yeah, I would love to have seen what Matt could have done had he only stayed sober. Had he only... But it's not just a matter of sobriety. This is the thing. Me and Will have talked about this. In the old days, when I say the old days, this is early AA, right? Those guys, this is something a lot of people miss nowadays. Those early guys, one thing that they didn't have to worry about, they never had to worry about this, was their wife going sideways. That didn't happen to those guys. That wasn't the culture. That we hadn't got there yet. That's why I date it to 1960. It was after 1960 when all this stuff started happening. And those guys didn't have this problem. Their wife stayed. They had another problem, which was they had to deal with it, right? But they did. A lot of them stayed sober, But nowadays, people that are getting sober post apocalypse period that I believe we're in, which is since 1960, where we're in the monogamish era. See, not only do we have this, rebuilding our life and learning how to stay sober one day at a time, but we also have the wreckage of these relationship traumas going into it, right? And then when we stay in it, if we stay clean and sober for any length of time, we get a relationship like Matt did, we rebuild our lives, and then the relationship goes sideways, and then it's too much. It's too much for a lot of people, and they're drinking to numb the pain. They don't know how to deal with the pain. It's the worst pain that you could ever have. It's worse than a heroin withdrawal. losing your family. People have described this, and I've experienced it over and over. There's nothing worse. There's no worse pain. I have been wrecked. I've been torn up from the floor up with my motorcycle accident, close to the brink of death. And yet, that physical pain doesn't compare to the pain from losing your relationship. It is like you're being, just like a bomb went off inside of you. And so what do people do? They return to drinking. And that's what modern people are dealing with. Not only do they have to deal with the substance abuse, but, you know, and Matt described it. Matt, this was in Matt's channel, and it was part of the deal. You know, he was kind of on about this, about the emotional side of recovery, you know, and people are really starting to tune into this a lot more nowadays, the emotional side of recovery. He had a term for it. I'm going to talk about that. But he was actually kind of trying to, you know, he fix this. Well, it's the underlying pain of, you know, why I'm drinking. See, the early guys, they never had that, right? And they say, oh, well, that's because they weren't in touch with. No, it's because they were in an era. See, this is what I've learned. It's also not our fault that our relationship goes sideways, like Matt just blamed himself. That's why I said, who drew first blood? I have that video. Go back and look at it. We mistake the fact that this is the big deal. The addiction stuff, that's a big deal too. But the bigger deal is the monogamish relationship destruction in the era that we're in. And that's why I think this story is such a profound story, and I'm going to bring it to you. And I hope that you can check out some of Matt's videos and see him, because he really was a special person. Just a kind and gentle soul who just had a love of life and God's green earth, and a very kindred spirit. The road wanderer. The road wanderer. He was doing a lot of the same stuff I'm doing, only I'm doing it. And I wish he could have saw that. I wish he could have done it too. There's room for all of us to be successful. Like, we don't all, like, there's nothing that says we all need to fail, you know. That's not a thing. So I think I'm going to take a break, wrap it up there. And I'm crossing the Columbia River right now as we speak. There it is. I'm on Highway 97 now, and I'll be heading north up the Columbia, get to Okanagan. Oroville is actually where I'm trying to get to. I hope that you get something out of this. I try to use this to illustrate what I think are really the relevant points. That I think Matt had that, even though he wasn't a red pillar, but I'm trying to bring you the black and the white pill, the actual success side of this. And it's so critical to me, that point between what I'm trying to define, you know, where does that point, you know, where the demon started talking to him and he listened, and where's that other point where we're tuned in to the higher power, to the greater, bigger picture, that there is life, and there is life abundant, of everything that we could ever need and want is here for us. Everything. I know you might find that hard to believe, but it's true. I'll see you soon. That's mine. The Road Warrior. That was the Road Wanderer. I'm the Road Warrior.
Are your dogs barking? My dogs have not shut up for like 3 months, bro. This is a train wreck. Yeah. Welcome to the train wreck. Oh my God, do you hear the music? A fiery ring. Bound by wild desire. I fell into a ring of fire. I fell down, down, down. Down, 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 and the flames burned higher. Burns, burns, the ring of fire. The ring of fire. Fell into a burning ring of fire. Down, 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 and the flames burned higher. Burns, 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 the ring of fire. The ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet. But hearts like ours beat. I fell for you like a child. Oh, but the fire went wild. I fell into a burning ring of fire. Down, 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 and the flames burned higher. Burns, 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 the ring of fire. The ring of fire. To a burning ring of fire. Down, 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 and the flames burned higher. Burns, 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 the ring of fire. The ring of fire. Tom is a good guy. I wish you would have not turned down his help last night. They're playing some Jimi Hendrix. This is her favorite Jimi Hendrix. We've talked about it. I'm going to hang up for a minute. I'm going to try and make a phone call. Drink my wine. Come and till my earth. None will level on the line. Nobody under this world. But you and I have been through that. And this is not our fate. So let us stop talking falsely now. The hour's getting late. Piece of cake.